Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. If you're a CSS aspirant, you know exactly why we're here today. We are jumping straight into a massive chunk of your business administration syllabus. Topic 4, Part 1, covering management planning and goal setting. Now, we're not just going to rattle off textbook definitions here. We want this to actually stick. So we'll be breaking down these heavy concepts using a real-world scenario, a growing retail company, so you can see exactly how this stuff works in practice.
Okay, here's our roadmap for this session. We'll hit 1. Fundamentals of management planning. 2. The purpose of planning. 3. Types of goals and plans. 4. Approaches to goal setting. 5. Contingency factors in planning. And finally, 6. Planning and dynamic environments. Let's get right into it.
Starting us off with Section 1, Fundamentals of Management Planning.
So, what exactly is planning? At its core, it's the management function of defining goals, establishing strategy, and developing plans to coordinate work. It really just boils down to two main things: the ends, which is what you want to achieve, and the means, which is how you're going to achieve it. Think of the ends as your final destination and the means as your GPS route. For example, if our hypothetical retail company decides they want to open stores in 3 brand new cities, well, that's their end. But figuring out the budget, hiring the local staff, scouting the actual storefronts, those are the means. You absolutely need both.
Which brings us to Section 2, the purpose of planning.
Now, you might be asking yourself, why do managers plan in the first place? I mean, really think about it. Why spend all that time and all those resources mapping things out before actually doing the work? What happens if a company just jumps in blindly?
Well, there are 4 key reasons managers do this. 1, it provides direction. 2, reduces uncertainty. 3, minimizes waste. And 4, establishes control standards. To put that into perspective, imagine a manufacturing factory. If they plan their production schedule, say 6 months in advance, they know exactly when to order raw materials and exactly how many people need to be on the floor next Tuesday. The result? Nobody's standing around, machines aren't sitting idle, and they aren't paying for extra warehouse space. It literally minimizes waste and sets a clear standard to measure against later.
All right, moving on to Section 3, Types of Goals and Plans. This is a big classification area for the exam, so let's pay close attention to how organizations define what they're after. First up, we have stated goals versus real goals. Stated goals are the official statements meant for stakeholders, the good PR. Real goals, on the other hand, are the actual pursuits defined by the actions of members. Here's a classic example. A company might proudly state, customer satisfaction is our #1 priority. Sounds great, right? But then you look closer and you see they just laid off half their customer service team to save a quick buck. The gap between the two tells you everything. Their real goal is cost-cutting. So always watch the actions, not just the mission statements. Next, we categorize plans by scope. We've got strategic plans, which cover the entire organization, are long-term, and get created by top management. Operational plans contrast with that. They focus on a specific operational area, are short-term, and are handled by middle or first-level managers. The big takeaway here is scale. A CEO deciding to launch the company into a totally new international market, that's strategic. But a factory floor manager writing up next week's shift schedule, that's a specific operational plan. Then, of course, we have the time horizon. Long-term plans have a time frame beyond 3 years. Short-term plans cover 1 year or less. Pretty straightforward, right? If your university announces a massive 10-year campus expansion, long-term, but their operating budget for this upcoming fall semester, short-term. Now let's look at flexibility. Directional plans are flexible guidelines, which makes them best for high uncertainty. Specific plans are clearly defined, leave zero room for interpretation, and work best when there's low uncertainty. So, if your industry is chaotic and changing every day, you need a directional plan, something broad like improve our presence in the Asian market. But if your market is totally stable, you want a rigid, specific plan, like increase Q3 sales by exactly 15%. Finally, we look at frequency. We have single-use plans, which are one-time plans for a unique situation, and standing plans, which provide ongoing guidance for repeated activities. Think of a massive corporate merger. The plan for that transition, you're only going to use it once. But your company's daily attendance policy, that guides everyday behavior, making it a standing plan. Make sure you keep these distinctions clear in your head. Let's jump over to Section 4, Approaches to Goal Setting. How do these goals actually make their way down the corporate ladder?
The management thinker Henry Mintzberg had a famous criticism of traditional planning. He said, thought must be detached from action. He was pointing out the flaw in the traditional top-down approach, where executives sit up in an ivory tower and just hand down orders to the people doing the actual work. This often creates a really toxic, at-all-costs mentality on the ground floor, where employees are forced to ignore reality just to hit some arbitrary number handed down from above.
To solve that disconnect, we use Management by Objectives, or MBO. Here are the first 4 steps. 1. Formulate overall objectives. 2. Allocate to units. 3. Unit managers collaboratively set objectives. And 4. Specific objectives set with all members. Notice the big difference here? It's collaborative. Instead of the boss just dictating the goals, managers and employees actually sit down together and mutually agree on them. It totally changes the dynamic.
And to round out the process, steps 5 through 8. 5. Agree on action plans. 6. Implement plans. 7. Periodic review and feedback. And 8. Reinforce with performance-based rewards. So let's say headquarters wants a 20% bump in sales, but the economy is actually shrinking. Under MBO, the sales manager and the team can push back, discuss the reality of the market, and maybe agree on a more realistic 15% target. And when they hit that target, they're rewarded for it. It keeps everyone grounded, aligned, and actually motivated.
All right, Section 5, Contingency Factors in Planning. Because let's be real, how often do things go exactly according to plan? Almost never.
The contingency approach can be summed up by this idea. If this is the way my situation is, then this is the best way for me to manage the situation. It basically means there's no magic one-size-fits-all rule in management. Every company is different, every crisis is different, and as a manager, you have to adapt your strategy to fit the exact contours of whatever reality you're facing today. So what drives those adaptations? Here are the key contingency factors. 1. Organizational level, so top versus middle or first level management. 2. Degree of uncertainty, meaning stable versus dynamic environments. And 3. Length of future commitments. Think about a startup in the tech sector. Tech moves incredibly fast. The uncertainty is off the charts. Trying to lock in a rigid 5-year plan in that environment is a recipe for disaster. They have to lean on highly flexible, directional plans that let them pivot the second the market shifts.
Which perfectly tees up our final section, Section 6, Planning in Dynamic Environments. How do modern managers actually deal with constant chaos?
Well, flexibility is key. Managers absolutely have to plan, but they cannot be rigidly tied to those plans. The timelines are just getting shorter. You literally have to be ready to scrap a strategy overnight if things change. The most obvious example? The COVID-19 lockdowns. Massive global corporations had to toss their 5-year roadmaps out the window on a Tuesday and scramble to build week-to-week plans just to keep the lights on.
So to survive in that kind of chaos, companies rely on environmental scanning and competitor intelligence methods. Some common ones are 1. Monitor public announcements, 2. Reverse engineering products, 3. Track competitor hiring patterns, and 4. Analyze supplier and customer feedback. A massive smartphone brand does exactly this. By dissecting a rival's patent filings, watching who they're poaching on LinkedIn, and scraping customer reviews, they can actually predict where the market is going before it gets there and adjust their own plans to stay ahead. And that wraps up our breakdown of Topic 4, Part 1. So here's a question for you. How will you apply these strategic planning concepts to your own CSS exam preparation? Seriously, are your study goals stated or are they real? Are you using directional plans or specific ones for your daily schedule? Apply this stuff to your own life. Use these principles to build your own roadmap to success. Keep studying hard and remember to join us for Part 2, where we'll be diving into decision-making. See you then.